Today is the teaching on the sixth day of the teaching on the Jewel Ornament of Liberation at the Winter Dharma Gathering, and it's our last day. But today it's like I have no energy. For a couple of days I haven't really been sleeping well. The reason is because I'm getting ready and doing work. And so I haven't really been sleeping well. And so today, I seem to have a little bit of, my blood pressure seems to be a little bit high today. And it's like I'm coughing a little bit, my lungs aren't feeling good. And it's as if I'm a little bit dizzy, so today, because my physical condition is not so good, I think. So I don't think that I'm going to be able to speak all that well today, but I will do my best. So, yesterday, continuing with the teachings on the ways of benefiting sentient beings, in terms of the 9 ways of benefiting sentient beings, so that we need to think about this in terms of the ways of helping sentient beings. And among these 9 ways of sentient beings, there are 4 that I have described already. And then the 5th, the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th remain on top, but today, because of my physical condition, and when I look at the time, I think it's difficult for me to go through all of them in detail. So in the future, if I do have time, I hope that I will be able to teach the remaining considerations. So 5 of the considerations are left, and the 5th, the 5 are considering this in future lives, considering the vows and non-virtues. The 7th is considering the pros and cons of giving. The 8th is considering sentient beings' separate interests. And the 9th is considering the pros and cons for your own Dharma practice. And so what I Now these 9 considerations are probably described in the 9 among the Indian tradition, but I think what I'm basically teaching this based on the teachings of Zato Rinpoche. So if you can think about, if you can look at the teachings of Pato Rinpoche, I think you'll be able to understand them pretty well. And so today, my hope is to go through all of the words in this chapter of the Jewel Ornament. So basically, I'll read the words of this chapter, and with making a little bit of some comments at various points. So it begins that the training and the precepts of engaged bodhicitta are threefold: the training in superior discipline, the training in superior mind, the training in superior wisdom. In this respect, the line for the path to awakening is those who abide within the vow of engaged bodhicitta have truly trained in the three aspects of moral discipline will greatly deepen their appreciation of these three trainings. And so I've already explained these at length over the past few days. So generally, when we talk about the Buddhist three trainings, and the way that they are superior trainings, in particular the way that the Mahayana trainings are superior to the foundation vehicle trainings, is here as taught in the Compendium of the Mahayana. And so it talks about the 4 ways that the training and discipline is superior, and the 6 ways that the training in samadhi is different. And now, if I just read the names of the 18 ways that training in prajna is superior, they're the essence of thought-free wisdom, the place, basis, the focus, image, response to objections, support, companions, the ripening, the compatible cause, deliverance, leading to the ultimate, arising from training, being thought-free, benefits of achieving, the classifications, and the analogies for achieving, and the spontaneous achievement. So in brief, these are these 18 aspects or different qualities that make them separate, that make the Mahayana trainings greater, superior to those of the Vinaya, of the foundation vehicle. Now, if we were to go into them in great detail, there's a lot of profound to say, but in terms of today, I think it's not necessary to speak them. Now, to continue with the words of the jewel ornament. Now, the training in discipline consists of 3: generosity, discipline, and patience. The higher training in mind consists of jhana, and the training in prajna consists of prajna. And diligence is an aid to all of this. It says in the ornament of Mahasutras, the victorious one has most perfectly explained the 6 perfections in terms of the 3 trainings. The first 3 are the first, the last are the last, while one applies to all 3. And so, what it says here is how the 6 transcendences are contained within all 3 trainings. And this also goes with the ascertainment of the number of the transcendences described before, and it talks about in terms of the 3 trainings, and it's basically the same presentation as here. So basically what it means is we have to divide up the 6 transcendences into the 3 trainings. And how do we just divvy them up? The essence of the training and discipline is discipline. Now, we must practice discipline without being attachment to food, clothing, and so forth. We also include generosity here. And also, in order to practice the 4 spiritual trainings, qualities of spiritual training, we also have to have patience. So these 3, generosity, discipline, and patience, are included within the training in discipline. Then, there are 3 that are left, right? And of these 3 that are left, what is jhana? Jhana is the essence of the training in samadhi, and prajna is the essence of the training in prajna, and so they're, of course, included in their own training. So there's one more left, and that's diligence. So with diligence, what do we do? Well, discipline is necessary for all 3 trainings, and so it's like the crown jewel of them all. Or it's like the shared wealth of all 3. It includes in all 3. So in brief, in order to perfect the 3 trainings, you need the 6 you must have all the 6 transcendences complete. And the 3 trainings are like the essence, the practice of all 6 transcendences. So this is why it is taught that the 6 transcendences are combined at the 3 trainings. I think that's the meaning of how it is. Now, following this, now we go to look at the words. Thus, the synopsis for this chapter is the following: training and engaged devoting to is comprised of 6-fold generosity, discipline, patience, diligence, jhana, and prajna. In the question of Subhaha Sutra, it says, Subhaho, for a great bodhisattva to quickly achieve real and perfect enlightenment, the 6 transcendences must be complete perfectly, and all the 6, they are the transcendent generosity, transcendent discipline, transcendent patience, transcendent diligence, transcendent jhana, and transcendent prajna. These 6 transcendences should be known through the disappointed explanation or an overview, treating them as a group. And so, to present the summary of the synopsis as follows: the 6 transcendences are summarized through the ascertaining their order, ascertaining their number, ascertaining their order, their characteristics, etymology, subdivisions, and groupings. So, in brief, presentation of these 6 transcendences is divided into 2 topics. Basically, there's an overview, and then there's the detailed explanation. And so here, this 11th chapter is the overview. And so this brief overview it says that it's teaching it in terms of these 6 points. And these 6 the first of these 6 is their definite number, or the ascertaining their number. And the ascertaining their number means, is what it says in the jewel ornament is, the ascertaining their number is 6. In terms of the higher states and liberation, in terms of conducive to higher birth, and the 3 conducive generation of the 3 that lead to the higher states: the perfection of generosity, nurtures material prosperity; discipline nurtures a good physical existence; and the patience nurtures favorable environment. Of the 3 that lead to liberation, the perfection of diligence increases qualities. And so the perfection of jhana nurtures shamatha, and the perfection of prajna nurtures insight. The ornament of Mahayana Sutra says the higher states, the best possible prosperity, body, and retinue. So here, the ascertaining the number of the 6 transcendences is taught in the Mahayana Sutras, including the Prajnapada, the mother of the victors, and other profound sutras as well. And they're also included taught in the ornament of Mahayana Sutras. And so here, and this is basically one of these, was basically the ornament of the sutras teaches 6 different ways of ascertaining the numbers. And the Mahayana Sangrama, or the compendium of Muhammad, has different ways of organizing them. And so here, the ones taught in the ornament of Mahayana Sutras are, if you ask, the first is ascertaining in terms of the higher states. The second is ascertaining the number in terms of accomplishing the 2 benefits. The third is ascertaining the number in terms of perfecting the benefit for all others in all ways. The fourth is in terms of including the entire Mahayana. And the fifth is in terms of the completeness of the aspects of the path or method. And the sixth is in terms of the 6 methods. So basically it's talking about these 6 ways of ascertaining the number. However, in the jewel ornament, is primarily speaking about in terms of the first way of ascertaining the number, and the meaning of the sixth of ascertaining the number in terms of the 3 trainings is taught has been taught above in the summary of the 3 trainings, and so it has already been explained. So basically, when you think about these six ways of ascertaining the number in the top of the ascertaining number, rather than going through all six, first, if we think about it in terms of ascertaining the number, in terms of ascertaining, that's because this is the one that is taught in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, so I thought I would teach this one. Now, the ascertaining the number in terms of the higher states. What this means is, generally when a bodhisattva practices, what the bodhisattva must practice is the six transcendences. And the way it's ascertained as being that is that these six are necessary for achieving the higher states, and that if any are missing, that one will not achieve the higher states. And the reason for this, if you ask, is, for example, if we want to have a good human rebirth in the next lifetime, and have all the facilities or other good conditions, and to be able to meet a teacher, then what we need is we need to have all six of the transcendences. And the six transcendences, and the way they have to all be connected is that, for example, if we want to be born as a human, you need to have a lot of food and clothing and everything. So what is necessary to have plentiful resources such as food and clothing is generosity. And the second is that you need to have a good body. And you need to be kind of attractive when you look at it, you have to be able to have a nice complexion, and so for that you must have discipline. And the third is that if you don't get along with your friends and families and so forth, so in order to do that, patience is necessary. And the fourth is that no matter whatever action you do, in order to complete it, diligence is necessary. The fifth is that whatever you focus your mind, you need to be able to direct it there and have control over it, and for that you must have dhyana. And the sixth is that in order to know whether your benefit or aims and actions are erroneous or not, you must have prajna. And so in order to achieve the excellent higher states, you must have to have all six, including generosity and so forth, and in particular the bodhisattvas, who are engaging the activity of the children of the Buddhas, that must absolutely have all six transcendences. So that's basically the meaning that is taught here. Now, in terms of the six, the way it's taught in terms of the Compendium of the Mahaniyana, it's taught a little bit differently. And so I basically just give you the terms. And the first is in terms of the antidote for overcoming the contrary factors. The second is to provide the basis for accomplishing the activities for achieving the qualities of a Buddha, and the third is to be able to become a precursor for ripening sentient beings. And so I think this is basically the same as the way that is taught in the three ways that are taught in the ornament of Mahayana Sutras for ascertaining the number. So in brief, even though there are no more than six, but there are reasons why we can ascertain the numbers, and the reason why there's so many ways to ascertain the numbers, and they come down to the point that basically bodhisattvas, whether the bodhisattvas need to achieve a good bodily basis, or be able to have to benefit others, or to solely benefit others, in briefly, no matter what action they do, no matter what size it is, if they lack the six transcendences, it's not okay. And so for that reason, it's said repeatedly. It's said over and over. And so just looking at it from many directions and coming from different perspectives to explain it. and to give a good explanation so that everyone can have a complete understanding. And so that's why this is why it gives so many different reasons. And then following that, now the next point is the order. And now from the words from the text is, the ascertainment of the order, the definite order, is the order which they develop in one's being. Generosity enables proper conduct without concern for material well-being. Discipline brings patience. With patience, then you're able to develop diligence, and through diligence you can develop dhyana. And with a mind that can rest skillfully in dhyana, will probably know the true nature of phenomena just as it is. Not that it can be considered in times the gradual perfection to Hasada higher, the lesser explained first, and those found out in what is nobler is subsequent, or the order of the sequent related to the progression from grosser to subtle. Those which are grosser is easier to engage in and is less presented earlier, while those that are subtler because of the being more difficult to enter are presented later. The ornament of the Mahayana Sutra says, the latter arises on the basis of what comes before, and since some are inferior and others superior, some grosser and others subtler, they abide in their respective sequence. So here's basically the ascertainment of the order. And so I'm talking about ascertaining the order. So here, the order of the six transcendences is first just then patience, then discipline, then patience, and it's an order of earlier and later, or higher and lower. And the reason why, it's giving the reasons why. And so there are three reasons. The first is the order that they arise. The order is the second of superior and inferior, and the third is in terms of subtlety. Now, the order of arising, what that means is, and to give the basic understanding of this, if you have no attachment to food, clothing, and things, then you're able to practice discipline. You can take vows, and you'll be able to keep them purely. And if you're able to turn away or refrain from harmful actions, and if you can restrain from those harmful actions, then you can be patient with those who harm you and not get angry, because when you see wrongs as being wrongs and reframe them for that reason, then you see the disadvantages of getting angry, and so therefore you'll be able to refrain from anger. And if you're able to put up with suffering, then you're not disappointed by difficulties, and you'll be able to put up with them. So that means you'll be vigilant. And so you will be able to not be put off by difficulty and hardships. You will not be discouraged by conflict. And if you are not discouraged by that, then your mind will naturally have courage and heart. And if you're able to have that diligence, what diligence is a zest for virtue. It increases being able to be able to practice day and night without being distracted. And if you're able to do that, then it's easy to develop the jhanas. And if you're able to place your mind on a virtuous focus, or to direct your attention toward, then you will be able to see that. If you're able to do that, then it is not difficult to develop the prajna that sees the nature as it is. And so, for these reasons, even if you have the earlier ones than the later ones, you have no difficulty developing them. They're easier to recite, and they can just arise very easily. And so that is the reason why it is taught in this. Now, the next is in terms of their superior or inferior. And what this is, in general, if we think about it, It's said that it's better keeping better than keeping infinite sutra disciplines in a higher realm is to keeping one in an impure realm. And so also when you think about keeping an ordinary individual keeping discipline and comparing that to a bodhisattva on the first level practicing generosity, the generosity of superiority. So there are many different factors that of support and time and intention and object that make it that can mix up the order. But in generally, if everything is order, if it is in general, it is for ordinary people. It is more difficult, superior for ordinary individuals to practice discipline rather than giving food and clothing, or to refrain from clothing, and even more difficult or greater refraining from killing is compared to refraining from killing, then not getting angry when other people surprise you is greater than that when other people harm you. And when you be able to practice that, what's greater than that is being able to be diligent. What's greater than that is be able to rest with your mind focused one-pointedly. And that being able to rest evenly with your mind focused means to be able to see the nature of the Four Noble Truths. And so in that, developing because of that, it produces the full-blown prajna, so that is what is superior. So for that reason, the later are superior to the earlier, or finer than the earlier, and so for this reason, there's this order of superior and inferior. And the third is the order of subtlety. So let me talk about this order of subtlety. So in one it's not saying that there's categorically that discipline, that generosity is easier than discipline, and that patience is easier than diligence. But it's not necessarily saying that. But if we think about it with ordinary individuals, we say that it's harder to keep vows than to give food and wealth. And in compared to keeping vows, when other people give you a hard time and being able to be patient and put up with that is even more difficult. And so, even more being patient than other people, being able to be diligent about listening, contemplation, meditation, have fortitude for it is even more difficult. And what's even more difficult than that is developing shamatha. And what's even more difficult than shamatha is realizing the meaning of emptiness and so forth, developing the prajna of insight. And so for that reason, the later ones are more difficult to practice than the earlier, difficult to develop in your being. And so for that reason, in terms of the difficulties, distinctions of difficulty or easiness, then they're given they're said to have difference of being gross or subtle. There are many different ways we can talk about grossness and subtlety, but here it's in terms of the difficulty and in terms of the easiness that they're called gross or subtle. The third point is the characteristics, and as it says this is the characteristics of bodhisattva's generosity and so forth, is that they diminish the strength of the unfavorable force, they enable the arising of wisdom, thought-free wisdom, they bring perfect accomplishment of your wishes, and they bring sentient beings to their full maturity in three ways. As it says in the ornament of Mahayana Sutras, generosity curtails unfavorable forces, brings thought-free wisdom, particularly fulfills our wishes, and brings beings to maturity in three ways, and so forth. And so at this point, when we're talking about the characteristics, the essences of generosity and so forth in general, and particularly the essences of transcendent generosity and so forth, They have many different types, and they have there are many different presentations. There's the one taught in the way of the Bodhisattva, that one taught in the Bodhisattva levels, in the discrimination the center from the edges, and in the compendium Mahayana Sangra, and so forth. There are many different ways, but here to take it in terms of the meaning as explained in the Ornament of Clear Realization, what it says in the Ornament of Clear Realizations is that there are four characteristics. And what these four characteristics are, and so the question of what is discarded, the antidote, the function, and culmination. These are the four. So these are four characteristics or qualities that are used to teach the essence of the transcendences. And so rather than going through it, if we just to illustrate use generosity, it discards its contrary, which is stinginess, and its function, or it's an antidote, is that it is endowed with thought-free wisdom, and its function is that it fulfills our temporary minutes, and its culmination is that it brings us to be able to stay in any of the three trainings. And so this is what is taught. But here in the jewel ornament, the jewel ornament is basically a way that is a text that teaches the Mahayana and the primarily is Mahayana text, not one that's common both. And so here it primarily is talking about the culmination of ripening sentient beings. Now the next part is the etymology, and what it says in the jewel ornament is the etymology is. Since it clears away suffering, it is generosity. Since it is the attainment of coolness, it is discipline. Since it bears with what causes anger, it is patience. Since it is application to that which is sublime, it is diligence. And since it turns the mind inward, it is dhyana. And since it knows the ultimate meaning of that, it is prajna. Since they all transport to the far side of Shambhala, that is nirvana, they are called transcendences or paramitas. And so as it says in the Ornament of Sutra, since one attains within poverty, eliminates poverty, obtains coolness, forbears wrath, connects with the supreme goal, retains the mind, and knows the ultimate, they are thus turned. Now, so these are similar to what we call in Tibetan an explanation of the world. We talk about the etymology or the explanation of the word. But here, the etymology or the meaning of the term given here is what is taught in Sanskrit, I think. And so you can't really say it's exactly the same in Tibetan. For example, if we think about, if we say like, since it eliminates poverty is generosity, you'd say you can take an understanding that, but if it goes directly to the, what is it? Does the Tibetan word jimpa or the English word generosity actually have that meaning? It's difficult to say. And the reason for that is that the meaning, if we look at the word for generosity in Sanskrit, then that has that meaning of eliminating poverty. And so that's, I think, why we're giving this explanation of the meaning here. So for this, so today, from one perspective, we don't have the time, and the second of us, that I don't know Sanskrit. So it's difficult for me to describe each of them in order. So in the future, I'll do a bit of study myself. And if I have enough time, then perhaps I hope to explain these explanations of the terms. Now the fifth point is the subdivisions. And as it says in the text, the subdivisions of the generosity of discipline, the discipline of generosity, and so forth, giving rise to 36 for each. And as the Ornament of Clear Realization says, with this profession is generosity and so forth, each has encompassing a sixfold division. This harmony-like complete means of attainment is explained exactly in terms of 6 sets of 6. And now the meaning of this is, how we should understand this is, so generally, when we, in the old days, when they would go to battle. It was different than it is today. So at that time, you had to have all the implements, all the physical. There are many different things that you had to had in order to go to war. Because when you go to war, you need to wear armor, armor and a helmet. And the second is that you wouldn't go alone. You need to have companions, fellow soldiers, and they also had to have many different. They need to have many different weapons. So they had to have spears and swords and axes, and even cudgels and stuff. They had to have many different weapons. And not only did you have that in the old days, when you would admit it, you need to actually get into you actually need to engage in the battle. And then after you've engaged in the event, then you need to see who won or who lost. Similarly, the clear ornament of realization of Prajnaparamita talks about 4 types of practice: armor-like practice, engaging practice, accumulating practice, and liberating practice. There are 4 different. So armor-like practice among these 4 is, as I said before, it's like putting on your armor helmet and other protective gear. So basically, when we talk about armor-like practice, and this is taught in the ornament of clear realization in terms of the 6 transcendences. And the reason for this is that when you go to war, you have to have the armor on your body and the helmet on your head. Your entire body needs to be well protected. If it's not well protected, then that place, if the weapon strikes that area that's not protected, then even if everything else is well protected, then it's useless. And so for that reason, so similarly with that meaning, if you emphasize one of the 6 transcendences and ignore the other 5, then those ones that you're ignoring, then how many of the contrary factors are going to arise for those? And so in that way, you have to make sure that in all respects you are protected from the contrary factors. And so for that reason, in each of the transcendence, you need to have all of these transcendences. So with generosity, you have to have the generosity of generosity, the discipline of generosity, the patience of generosity, the diligence of generosity, the jhana of generosity, and the prajna of generosity. So in this way, in each of the transcendences, you have to have each of the transcendences, so you have to have the strong armor that prevents any act of disorder. Or if you think about it with the American president, no matter where he goes, he has like this bubble, this protective bubble that he's kept within. It's like they surround him from above and below, and from back and the front and back and the sides. And if you think about it, so they need to be protected from all sides, and you have to be protected in the same way. Next, and so in this way, each transcendence is divided into 6, and so you've got 66 difference. That is the reason for that. Now, the second one, the 6th point is the groupings. Now, what it says is the grouping is in the 2 accumulations. So generosity and discipline belong to the accumulation of merit. Wisdom, prajna becomes the accumulation of wisdom. Patience, diligence, and dhyana belong to both. As the ornament of Mahayana Sutra says, generosity and discipline belong to the accumulation of merit, while prajna belongs to the accumulation of wisdom, and the remaining 3 belong to both. This then concludes the presentation of the 6 transcendences, the 11th chapter of the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. So generally here, so this talks about there are different ways that the 6 transcendences can be grouped together. The 6 transcendences are, if you think about different ways to group them, So there's the way they can be grouped in terms of the two accumulations, the way they can be grouped in the three transcendences, and there's many different ways to talk about it. Here it is talked about in terms of the two accumulations. And this is a little bit different than when we're talking about in terms of the three trainings. So for that reason here it's taught in terms of the two accumulations. Now, so when you talk about it in terms of the three trainings, let's talk about the precepts of the Bodhisattva. When you say that the precepts of the engaged bodhicitta are the three transcendences, or the three trainings, and so and we say that this includes all of the six transcendences. So I think this is what's saying here. So in the future, if I'm able to write a commentary, I will be on the jewel ornament. I would be able to go into detail. And so today, it's difficult for me to talk about it in a complete way and really well, and an appropriate way. And so at this, having this opportunity to teach these stainless words of the Dapo Kajin during this nuns Buddha Dharma gathering is, for me personally, it's like, it just shows that it's a representation for me of being able to do something meaningful in this human life. So a person like me, like we have in the Tibetans, if you put them at the goal, they have nothing. Put them at the head of the road, they don't have the skills. If you put them bottom of the road, they don't have the capacity. For to be able to have someone who's able to really give you direction for this lifetime and for your lifetime, who's really, don't have that capacity, I'm not appropriate. But it's like you'd use dog spit on a wound, and if it would help. So if I use my flesh and blood and bones and my vitality and life force, and if it brings some benefit, even if it's just a little benefit, just being able to use it, and for that to benefit, and if that can bring some benefit to you, then I feel for me like that's a good fortune and really a good merit. And so that's been my thought as I've been giving this teaching on the jewel ornament to you as like an offering or as a present. So generally, so for the time that for me, from the time that I've been 7 until now, I've been only followed other people's directions and followed people's supervision. I haven't really been able to make my own plans for this lifetime. I haven't been able to have my own hopes, and I haven't had any choice in anything either. So in this way, I've gone wherever the winds of karma from past lives have blown me, wherever they've driven me, and that's how things have gone. But through the compassion of the Gurus and Three Jewels and the blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, no matter how many difficulties I've encountered or whatever mistakes or faults have happened, I've always, been able to keep the good intention without it declining within myself. Now, my own nature is kind of like a little child, thinking about things in a simple way. It's not like I'm always contemplative. It's not like I don't have a bad attitude about things. Even if I wanted to have a bad attitude, if I tried to force myself to do it, I can't do it for more than a few hours. Whether you call this a quality or a fault, but that's how I am. So some people think, he's always scowling. He must be really short-tempered, or it's like some old person who's always thinking too hard. But actually, in terms of how it is, that's not it. And some people might think that when he teaches the Dharma, it's like he's got so much to say that he never runs out. He never runs out of anything. He must be really speak easily, that I'm really have a creative mind. But that's not it either. Actually, the way it really is Usually in my daily life, I really don't know how to speak well or to make myself understood. I'm not always talking. I speak very little. I'm very taciturn. As in brief, I'm the most ordinary of ordinary people. I'm the same as all of you. I don't have 4 faces, 6 arms, and all that to show you. But my life has been a bit different than yours. And the reason is that what you see now is someone with the title of a High Lama who sits on this high throne. That's all you can see. But behind that, how much happiness is there? How much sadness? You can't know. Especially with me. I've grown up surrounded by political problems, sectarian problems, and many other difficulties. And so from one side, other people place hopes in me and praise me. Then from the other side, people denigrate me and they criticize me. In brief, there are people who toss flowers at me and people who toss garbage at me. So because of that, in this lifetime, my life has turned out differently than for many. But however, the me that people see is not actually me, the same me that lives in this life. It's not the same. We're all the same in being people. We all have different titles and different jobs, but we're all the same in being humans. We're all just living as basic humans. But we have to gauge, because we have to gauge our own individual capacities, we see things differently, we do things differently. And so it's not always so easy. Because gauging your own capacities and then doing the work is not a very easy thing to do. So so up until now in this lifetime, the greatest experience I have learned is we must not lose heart. But when you talk about heart or enthusiasm, doesn't come on its own. It's not automatic. It doesn't come automatically. And we can't borrow a heart or enthusiasm from anywhere else. So what we have to do is we have to find it through our own efforts. We have to look for it. We have to search for it. Now, whether we find it or not is not a question of where we look. It's a difference in the person searching. It's a difference in the human who is looking. So please, none of you lose heart. And in particular, this winter Dharma gathering for the nuns is intended for all the nunneries and for all the nuns. For all the nunneries and all the nuns. So you should serve it with the most altruistic motivation you can. And be as careful to act as possible, to act in ways beneficial to all. In the future, it'll be the basis for benefiting the teachings in general, and in particular for increasing the nuns' listening, contemplating, study, and practice. It'll become a place where we can do that. So I think we all need to work together, and if we can all work together, then there's no doubt that it'll bring benefit to help the teachings flourish and for being expanded. So please do not lose heart now, and in the future do not lose favor. And myself, I will not lose heart. I will not lose heart for benefiting myself and all others until I achieve Buddhahood, until I achieve enlightenment. I will do what I can so that we can all go together and so that the teachings may flourish. So please, thinking in this way, make the aspirations and the dedications. Thank you.